Hello and welcome to my FlossTube channel. I'm Farish and I am so glad to be back here with you again. It has been way too long. I've had a busy couple of weeks and I'm going to catch you up on all the fabulous things that I've been doing throughout the month of January, and here we are into February already. So if you've been following along, you know that we had our first FlossTube at Sea cruise in January. And as I made my way down to Fort Lauderdale for the embarkation day for the cruise, I was able to just kind of relax and enjoy myself, spend some time with my good friend Karen Owen, who is the owner of the cross-stitch cupboard right there in Fort Lauderdale. And we did a sort of a shopping day before the cruise for those that were on the cruise. It was a lot of fun. There were quite a few people who had never been to the cupboard, and we had a couple of people who had never been to a local needlework shop. So it was just a thrill to be around people who were thrilled with what they were seeing and experiencing for the first time. And then of course there was the cruise, and then afterwards spent a little bit more time at the cupboard again, and then also visited two other shops on my way home. And I'll share a lot more about both of those shop visits in upcoming episodes. I'm not going to try to squeeze all of it into this episode today. It'll make it way too long. But I did want to just tell you that we had a fabulous time on the cruise. I said this to the group. If I had been able to handpick the participants for this first FlossTube at Sea, I couldn't have done a better job of picking people who just enjoyed stitching, enjoyed being with other stitchers, who just sort of took in all the wonderful amenities on the ship. We just had a fabulous time. We had great weather, incredible food, top-notch service. Just check. Every box got checked off for our first FlossTube at Sea cruise. And we do have the second one planned, and registration for that one will open later this month. And I'll put all the details in the episode description, including a link to the website where you can get all the details. So let me start with my shop visit with the cross-stitch cupboard. Now, Karen has been in business as long as I have. We've connected on a lot of different levels. You know, if I lived right there in Fort Lauderdale, I know she would just be, you know, just somebody I would hang out with just all the time. We have a lot in common. But interestingly enough, we both started our business in the same year, 1981. So we've both been at it for a long time. Me coming from the design end, she coming from the shop owner end. And so when we get together, we have a lot to talk about, things that are going on in the industry, trends, questions that people ask most commonly of both her and myself. And so we wanted to answer some of those questions in this interview. So admittedly, it's kind of choppy. There were just a lot of things going on. So it's probably not going to be my smoothest edit, but I think that you're going to enjoy. So come along to my shop visit at the cross-stitch cupboard in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So Karen, there's been a lot of talk about different fabrics and just the language that we use about counts, thread counts, and whatnot. And so since I'm here at the cross-stitch cupboard, I figured this was the perfect place to really define a few things. That all the fabrics that we use for counted thread work I should say they're all even weaved, because now we have uneven weaves.
Yes.
But in general, even weave simply means that when the fabric's created, you've got the same number of threads going in one direction as the other direction. And for a long time, that was the ideal.
Right.
Now there's more of a trend to look for uneven weaves, which many people find nice for when they're doing antique sampler reproductions, because many of those pieces, when they were originally stitched, were on an uneven weave. So you might have a fabric that's 30 threads the inch in one direction and 35 in the other. So that's a whole different story. Mainly today we'll talk about even weaves.
Okay.
And so in that category, we have Aida, we have linen, and then we have the category that people refer to as even weaves, which
The Joblins and the Luganas.
Right.
Those where the threads are slightly worsted and a little bit rounded, and so they are also referred to as even weaves.
Yeah, so that's become kind of the common language, that we kind of categorize fabrics in three broad labels, I guess I should say: Aida, even weave, and linen. So let's start talking about your Aida.
Okay. Well, we have from 6 count on to 56 count. But in the Aidas, we have 14, 16, 18. Those are all exact squares that come in those inches, and that's how they're named, 14 squares to the inch.
Right. So a lot of people will talk about 22 count, but that's actually hard
hanger. And those threads are not as tightly woven.
Right.
And if you've ever tried it and not paid attention, you lose a thread as you're stitching and you wonder, where did that go?
Right.
And it slides right underneath.
Yeah, the weave hardanger fabric is woven different than Aida
Exactly.
fabric. So 14,
16, and 18 are the Aidas.
okay.
And then I have 20 count also now, which in essence is an Aida, but they don't call it that. But it is an even square that is just
Really?
like the 18.
Now who makes that?
Zweigart.
Yeah. So, and when we talk about a Zweigart fabric, for example, that's the manufacturer. And they make Aida, they make hardanger, they make even weaves, they make linen. So, and then of course there are many other manufacturers as well.
Exactly. And this is a great teaching tool. This really helps us to get the idea across of what it means to have a fabric that is 14 count versus a fabric that's 16 count, the slight difference in size.
Which I love, as far as it really illustrates that you take the exact same chart, exact same number of stitches,
Yeah.
and how different it's going to look.
It's going to
on
look
different count fabric. So here's the perfect time to say, and I've said it again and again, and I will keep saying it: you can take any chart and stitch it on any count fabric.
Exactly.
Period.
Yes.
It will just be bigger or smaller depending on the count fabric.
And to figure that size out, you take the number of stitches on your chart, which might be 130 or whatever, and then you divide it by the number of squares in your fabric. If it was 14 count, you divide it by 14. That tells you what you need for the stitching, and then you add on your borders, whatever border amount that you prefer. Everybody's different on that.
Right.
So I usually ask, what kind of border would you like, depending on how you're finishing it.
Right, because, you know, somehow, again, and my viewers have heard this from me before, 3 inches is not a magic number.
No.
3 inches works for many people, and it somehow has become the standard, and that just doesn't work.
And the reason is this: oftentimes in a store, when you're cutting fabric for someone, you may not know exactly, and they may not know exactly what they're going to finish or how they're going to finish it.
Good point.
So you cover your bases by making sure that they have enough. Nothing's worse than not having enough. And if you've ever tried to frame yourself a stitch piece and you don't have enough fabric, you know the heartache of that.
Yeah. Talk about like Joblin and Lugana. They are manufactured by 2 different companies, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so, and they have a fiber content that is a percentage of cotton and a percentage of a man-made fiber.
Polyester kind of.
Right.
So you don't get deep wrinkles in those kinds of fabrics that you might get in the 100% cotton.
And as you said earlier, because they are made of cotton and a polyester of some sort, then the threads, as the threads are spun, that are then woven into the fabric, they are more even in terms of their thickness. And that's what throws a lot of people, many people who say they do not want to stitch a linen. The number one reason they give is because you have fat and thin threads. And that is not a quality thing. That has to do with the flax plant that the linen is made from. When you are weaving with threads that are made of cotton and polyester, it's much easier to get those threads even.
And you don't have the slubs.
Yeah. Now, you could produce linen that all the threads were even and there were no slubs, but I promise you it would be very expensive. Jobelin and Lugana are somewhat interchangeable.
Yes, yeah.
They
Murano is also another name that's used for those even fabrics. But I think that when you look at even in the hand dyed, and the evenness does make a difference because it varies with how it takes the dye. That's an actual hand dyed fabric. And then when you see another piece, it may take the dye completely different. That's another one. It's very interesting because these threads have sort of a rounded, almost worsted kind of feel to them. And that makes the dye maybe not absorb exactly the same way.
I'm going to jump in here with a note about the dyeing process as it relates to fiber content. Now, we've already talked about how Aida, even weave, and linen are different in terms of the weave themselves, but they're also different in terms of their fiber content. Most Aida is 100% cotton. There are some exceptions, but most of what people use and are labeled strictly as Aida are 100% cotton. Even what we have come to know as even weaves, your Jobelins, Luganas, are a combination of cotton and a man-made fiber. So that all by itself gives you a distinction between Aida and your even weaves. Aida being 100% cotton, your even weaves being a combination of cotton and some sort of man-made fiber. Usually about 50-50. And then let's talk about your linens, which to be labeled linen need to be woven from 100% flax, which is flax is a plant just as cotton is a plant. So now you've got three different fiber contents. You've got 100% cotton with Aida. You've got a combination of cotton and a man-made fiber with your even weaves, and you've got 100% flax for your linens. And each one of those is going to take the dye differently. So if you are in a store and you see a newly released over-dyed fabric, it all has the same color name, and yet they may look different depending on whether it's Aida or an even weave or linen. And that is because the fiber themselves react differently to the dye process. So the dyer can use the exact same dye, can use the exact same process in all three fabrics, and yet you're going to end up with different results. So if you notice this when you're shopping, your eye is not fooling you. There is indeed a difference in the way, and the end result as far as how that fabric is going to look.
You might notice that the 32 count Jobelin takes the dye a little bit different than the 28 because it's a tighter weave, and so it doesn't absorb the dye in the same way. 28 count takes it a little deeper, and those colors can be a little deeper. If you look at some of the hand-dyed fabrics and you lay them out, 14 count, 16 count, 28 count, 32 count, they will all look different. They will,
even though they have the same...
Even though it's the same dye combination, the same chemistry, but they will take the dye completely different.
Okay, so Karen, a lot of people are stitching on the higher count fabrics. I don't.
But there seems to be almost a contest to say, hey, I can stitch on 56 count. We do have 56 count. We have 46 count. Most of my customers must use magnification for it because it is tiny, tiny. But it feels lovely in hand. This is an example of a legacy linen, and it is 56 count. This is 45 count. And then I have another legacy linen here that is, this one is 56 raw. Whoops, dropped one. It's very, very fine. It's
gorgeous.
almost like handkerchief linen because
Right.
it is so fine. But it can be stitched on with a single thread. And I will tell you that silk is the way to go because it will slide much better than trying to do a single cotton thread. But we have all those, we have everything from 6 count to 56 count here at the cupboard.
Let's go to the other end of the count and talk about the 6 count and the 7 count Claustern was always one of my favorites.
Yes.
And 6 count is Herta.
Yes, 6 count is Herta, and then it goes to Claustern, then it's 8 count, 10 count. These are all 10 counts. And then you pop on over to 11 count. And then we go into the biggie of 14 count. But this is great to stitch on, and especially if you're doing a stand-up, it makes your smaller piece nice and big, and your stand-up can be substantial. It's also fast to stitch because it's so easy to see, and you're making those nice big X's. You don't have to count and recount quite so much.
And isn't that what a lot of the shepherd's bush stockings are stitched on?
The shepherd's bush stockings are stitched on what used to be 18 count over 2, so they were 9 count. Now that 18 count is not being made anymore, and they're stitched on 20 count over 2. So now they're really 10 count, and we carry that fabric. It's a nice. You can barely tell the difference in size. It's very minimal from what was previously made, but that original fabric that Shepherd's Bush used is no longer being produced.
Yeah. Is that Floba?
No.
Floba
Floba has open threads, and it's like the Hardanger. It's it slides underneath real easy, so it's not a Floba.
How about that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, when I look at the color range that you have, it's just absolutely amazing. I mean, I love that Christmas red.
Thank you. Well, we try to have something for everybody, and we will order you whatever fabric you might want. So if you see the fabric online or whatever and you want it, you call me and I will order it for you. We have relationships with all the dyers.
Right. Well, you've been doing this for a long time.
43 years.
Yes. I've mentioned before we started our business in the same year in 1981. So it's been a long time, a great journey.
It has been a wonderful trip.
And then I asked Karen to tell me about some of the special projects that I noticed around her shop.
This is one of our cutest ornaments. It's a lobster in its own little trap, and it will hang on your tree and remind you of good lobster dinners. It comes complete with everything in it, even the trap makings, and it is $29. It's really cute. It's from Elegant Thread. And that little cutie is from the 2023 Just Cross Stitch Christmas Ornament magazine. We did it in a small count or a large count. These are the larger cupcake holders. This is the smaller cupcake holder. We have them both, and you can make that little tart. We added a little tart pan to ours, and that makes it even cuter. Here's our little secret about this wonderful design. We chose a Heatherfield fabric, which is already brown, and so you don't have to stitch all of that surrounding brown like it's charted. You can just use the brown fabric, and voila, you've got a quick ornament that's as cute as can be.
So which fabric is it that you recommend?
This is a Heatherfield 26.
Later that afternoon, when I was busy packing for the next leg of my journey, Karen made a quick trip to see her finisher and brought back these 3 beautiful examples of her finisher's work. One of the things that amazed me was when Karen told me that her turnaround time is sometimes as short as a week or two. So if you are someone who's shopping around for a good finisher for your needlepoint treasures, look no further than the Cross Stitch Cupboard in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I have no scientific proof of what I'm about to say, but I'd have to think that per square foot, the Cross Stitch Cupboard has more models than any cross stitch shop in America. Now, if somebody wants to challenge that, then they are welcome to. But I think part of this comes from the fact that Karen has been in business as long as she has. And so no trip to the Cross Stitch Cupboard would be complete without meandering and wandering through the various displays that she has. Some of them are by theme. Here we have many of her Christmas-related cross-stitch charts and models. She also always has a seasonal display. Here it's all set up for Valentine's Day. And I think that the variety of styles that she offers is one of the things that has people coming back to her time and time again. And when you come to the cupboard, don't forget to look up. Honestly, the models go from floor to ceiling. And if you don't look around in all directions, you're going to miss something. As a cross-stitch designer, I'm always looking for new products, and some needles caught my eye. Needles from Edmar, is that right?
Edmar, they make a needle that's the equivalent of the Pat Carson needle that was so beloved and is no longer available. They have an eye that is smoothly finished with a jeweler's tool, and it is gold, so it doesn't chew up your fiber, and the silver part doesn't deteriorate if you have acid in your system, and as you stitch with it, it will not turn black. It's a great needle. I love it. It is very inexpensive. You get 4 needles for $3.95. You can't beat that.
So that gives you a glimpse into the wonderful visit I had with my friend Karen and the time I got to spend in her shop. This trip was also all about FlossTube at sea, and I realized that I have shared very, very little about that trip with you. That's going to be in the next episode, so make sure that you come by for a visit and learn all about our first FlossTube at sea. But I do want to share with you the sampler that I designed for the benefit of those group members. Now, when I design these samplers, I generally give you some sneak previews as I'm going along and share some of my challenges and struggles with the whole design process. This time I didn't get to do that because early on, Jan Hicks and Michelle Bendy, who were my co-hosts, and we all decided that we would do a big reveal actually on the ship as far as what our projects look like. So that was hard for me not to share with you what was going on in my design and stitching process, but I get to share that with you now. For this sampler, I chose a Jimmy Buffett lyric in honor of his incredible contributions to the music world, and also for people of my generation, these were coming of age events. I never got to go to a Jimmy Buffett concert, but I certainly listened to his music, and there was just something about Jimmy Buffett and summer that just went together. And so in honor of him, I chose this lyric. And then the colors I chose are very reminiscent of 2 turtles and a flamingo, and I repeated some of those design elements. So if you have stitched that one, or you're thinking about stitching that one, and you want a companion piece, this is the perfect one for that. Now, FlossTube at Sea is all about projects and education. You know I can't go anywhere without teaching. It's in my blood. And so what I did on this cruise was I shared how to convert a chart that was meant to be completely in cross stitch, how to also implement a few stitches like the herringbone stitch and the long arm cross stitch, just to dress it up a little bit. And for people who have never tried specialty stitches, it was a way to sort of stretch their comfort level and to expand on their journey, so that while we were sailing these beautiful Caribbean waters, they were also continuing their journey as a stitcher. So this is going to be in my Etsy store now. Probably by the time you're watching this, it'll be in my Etsy store, and shops, of course, can order it directly from me. So anyway, so this is the egret and the dolphin. And interestingly enough, I had kind of up close and personal experiences with both an egret and a dolphin on this cruise, which really made it special for me. So anyway, that's a little glimpse into my 3 weeks away from you, and I'm looking forward to catching up and getting back on track. When I got home Sunday a week ago, I kind of gave myself permission to have a couple of days off. I had really been operating, flat out. Every day was busy, every day was full, a lot of driving. And I just decided that I deserved to have a couple of days off. So that's what I did. And then I had one day that I had a couple things that absolutely had to get done. And on Thursday, February 1st, I had second surgery on my left hand. And that's certainly impacting my journey as a designer, businesswoman, and stitcher. Gonna make the best of it and just keep on keeping on. And as I mentioned, I think in a previous episode, learning to adapt and tell myself, well, if I can't do something the way I've always done it, there are other ways. So that's what I've been working on. So between now and next week, stitch happy, stay safe, and I'll see you then.